The matchup between Andre Galvao and Gordon Ryan is an interesting one, and a lot of people think that Andre has the advantage when it comes to wrestling. But Gordon Ryan is leading the charge in this new way of thinking, where it's not enough just to win, and how you win is just as important. And for a lot of people, what this means is going out there Jordan Hawley style and trying to win in the first 30 seconds of the match. But Gordon is as petty as they come, and a lot of times Gordon likes to win in a way that's going to prove his haters wrong. And recently, that's been wrestling.
I actually wasn't planning on insisting on wrestling with him, but then I heard Kyle Otero talking about how it wasn't smart for me to wrestle with him because his wrestling's so good. So I made it a point to just go out there and out-wrestle him.
And the talk around town leading up to this match is no different.
I think Andre's got him on the wrestling.
And it makes me feel like people are just poking the bear again. And I really doubt we're going to see Gordon use a takedown attempt to pull guard, or try a guillotine off a takedown attempt, and if it doesn't work, just accept bottom position. I think Gordon wants to prove to everyone that he's a better wrestler than Andre Galvao. But from a spectator's perspective, it means it's probably going to be a pretty boring match, especially early on. So when you're hyping the fight to your friends and family, and you're telling about this guy who talks a bunch of online and slap the greatest champion of the sport, and they're finally going to get to fight this weekend, they're going to be like,
oh shit, dude.
They're all going to come over to watch, and when they see this, they're going to look at you and say,
what am I looking at?
So the goal of this video is to give you some things to look out for and determine who I think is the better wrestler going into the match. Before we dive into this video, I wanted to thank the new sponsor of this channel.
My favorite no-gi grappler. It is BMAC Brandon McCatherine.
And you probably know Brandon as the EBI announcer that wears the cool fedoras. And a lot of you probably know that he's going to be an announcer at ADCC this year, which is a pretty big deal. But I bet a lot of you didn't know that he has a website called BJJ365, where Brandon and other high-level instructors share technique. But the thing I found most helpful about BJJ365 is that Brandon uses the 80-20 rule, which basically means that if you watch 20 hours of John Danaher, Gordon Ryan, and Craig Jones talking about leg locks, 80% of your success is going to come from 20% of that content. And in his course on leg locks, Brandon lets you inside his classroom where he teaches the 20% of the techniques that he believes will bring you 80% of your success, from the perspective of someone who gets to see the highest level of jiu-jitsu up close and personal. And then I've been cross-referencing these techniques to see what Danaher, Gordon, and Craig have to say about them to help fine-tune the technique, but understanding what techniques work at the highest level so we can maximize our training and get the best results is exactly the goal of this channel. And I found BJJ365 to be a great way to get Brandon's perspective and find ways to drill important techniques. So if you're interested, the link will be down in the description, and use the code JAKE to get 25% off your first month. Now, when talking about Andre and Gordon, a lot of people like to emphasize their differences.
Very different games, obviously pretty, almost you could say polar opposite,
But I wanted to start this video out talking about the similar strategies they had when dealing with Felipe Pena, where they basically both just used collar ties to wear Felipe out and then began to take him down. But Felipe is a hard person to keep down, but he can only do that so many times before he starts to break. And then off of restarts, he starts to make a big scene, where Andre clearly had his hands locked when they went out of bounds, but then after waiting for a little while, and with the help of 2 refs and a lot of back and forth talk, we finally restart, but Andre doesn't even get to connect his hands. And I don't mean to sound like I'm just taking shots at Felipe, because everyone does this, including Gordon, where he has a nice back take but ends up with a bottom side body triangle. But off the restart, he just casually switches it to a top side body triangle. So again, I'm not trying to take shots at Felipe. I just thought it was very interesting how Andre and Gordon had very similar strategies that involved taking their opponents into deep waters.
As the matches go on, this is when I start to pick up. This is my second match of the day. I have the absolute next, and this is where I really start to come into my own.
I felt, okay, with a lot of respect for Pavel Popovic, I felt like I broke him, mentally.
They just had different ways of executing that strategy. Andre really enjoys blast double legs and single legs, and he uses heavy collar ties to kind of wear his opponent out and get them to stand more upright. But when it comes time to actually take his opponent down, Andre does not like to use a lot of collar ties, and he's often the one pushing his opponent away. And then when no one has any grips on each other, that's when Andre likes to shoot in. And when he's at his best, he's constantly going back and forth between reaching for your head and faking shots, which can be very hard to time. Now, Gordon likes to weigh heavy on his opponent's head as well, and he'll set up collar ties with foot sweeps. He'll also grip fight his way to underhooks, and off that underhook, try a foot sweep. But if that foot sweep doesn't work, go knee tap. Gordon also likes to force this cross shoulder post, and then off that cross shoulder post, go foot sweep, or off that same cross shoulder post, you can go elbow pass. Now, if we watch Andre, he'll use similar grip fighting, like forcing this cross shoulder post, but he uses it to get even heavier on his collar ties. And in his most recent match, he's able to get a pretty deep underhook off this front headlock, but then just uses it to pull guard. And in that same match, he takes a 2-on-1 grip and doesn't really do anything offensive, and his opponent just pushes away, while Andre counters with a kidney shot. But someone like Gordon is going to look to counter that grip.
He uses 2-on-1s a lot. I should have been going for drags, but I wasn't.
And you can see off this 2-on-1 grip, Gordon tries an arm drag, but then uses the cross shoulder post to recover complete inside position. And here you can see Pedro using that cross shoulder post to set up a Russian arm. And Gordon counters that with an underhook and attempts a knee tap. Where if Andre's put in a Russian arm, he's looking to play a very negative gripping game and disengage. Because when it comes to actually taking someone down, Andre prefers to not get tied up at all. And if he is losing the grip fight, Andre's going to be the one to push away. Whereas when Gordon's losing the grip fight or just wants to disengage, he'll often snap his opponent down, which can lead to different attacks. So I think the biggest difference I've seen is that when it comes time to actually take their opponents down, Gordon has a very offensive style of gripping where he's very comfortable in the pocket, exchanging grip for grip, and probably has a counter to your counter. Whereas Andre will play the grip fighting game, but when it comes time to actually take someone down, he gets very defensive with his grip fighting and wants to shoot from a distance and just run right through you. So we just talked about how their setups are almost completely opposite, but the finish is the most important part.
It's really, really important to know how to finish a single leg, how to finish a double leg.
And I think it's easy to look at Galvao just running through his opponents, and then look at Gordon trying to finish a single leg, and think to yourself that this isn't even a comparison. But I think the first thing to keep in mind is that this is 2017 Gordon. But we've seen his teammate Marigali in March look like he's never even picked up a leg before. And then in July, he's dropping people with ease. So I imagine Gordon's going to be able to finish a takedown just fine. But I think it's super important to define what we mean by finishing. Because as Danaher talks about on Instagram, it's not the act of taking someone down that's rewarded in Jiu Jitsu. It's what follows after the takedown that matters. And oftentimes these blast double legs result in a scramble after they hit the mat. And Andre's teammate Lucas Barbosa was able to put Gordon on the ground multiple times, but was never able to hold him there. So finishing a takedown is often going to come down to your ability to attack from turtle or front headlock. And if we watch Andre's most recent match, he finds himself in the front headlock and tries to spin very quickly to his opponent's back, but it results in his opponent recovering their guard. And when you compare that to Gordon and the way he puts his opponent's hands on the ground, then transitions to a crucifix position, and then uses that to set to this position here, which I'm not entirely sure what it's called. Ben Askren calls it sitting the corner in this video, but I imagine it has an actual name, so leave that in the comments below. But he uses that to transition to an outside scorpion, and ultimately take the back, get the points, win the match. And when you compare that to this, I think it's pretty clear who has the advantage in this department. If I do jiu-jitsu and I'm trying to become a better wrestler, and I'm looking at two guys that both like to weigh heavy on their opponent's heads, and then as the match goes on start to pick up the pace and get into their takedowns. And one of them likes to shoot from a distance with blast double and single legs. And the other one feels very comfortable exchanging grips with their opponent and going into more elaborate sequences to set up their takedowns. If these two were to have a wrestling match, there's definitely an argument to be made that the more explosive guy would win, and that style of wrestling has been proven to work at the highest level time and time again. But on the other hand, we've seen Gordon's style being used to take someone with no experience wrestling to someone who can wrestle and take down the best people in the world in a matter of months. So I think it's pretty clear at this point, but I'm going to say that Gordon Ryan is the better wrestler, especially under jiu-jitsu rules. And this could be that I'm just a very analytical person and I enjoy seeing the sequences that Gordon uses standing as opposed to beautiful level changes and explosiveness from Andre. And I think a lot of people that are subscribed to this channel appreciate and give props to Gordon's wrestling. And that's why the majority of you agree with me that Gordon is the better wrestler heading into this match. But honestly, as good as Gordon's wrestling has been lately, I think we still haven't seen anything yet, and he still has a few tricks up his sleeves. But Andre is a tank of a human, with a very supportive and confident team around him.
The challenge of Gordon is what motivates him, and it keeps him moving, and he wakes up every day ready to face that, and I can't wait to see it, and we're going to get the W.
So my prediction is it's going to be a lot of hand fighting for the first 5 to 10 minutes of the match. And I really wouldn't be surprised if Andre shoots his shot and puts Gordon's butt on the ground a couple times. But I would be really surprised if Andre was able to keep Gordon down or take his back. And the only way I really see Gordon getting held down is if he committed to a guillotine or Andre's able to completely exhaust him, which I think is very unlikely because one, Gordon is much taller than Andre. So Andre's
gonna have to reach a bit taller, to get to his head.
2, Gordon is probably the best person in the world at pacing and making his grips super sticky and hard to break away from. And 3, in his last fight that was 12 minutes long, Andre gassed. And it could be because he didn't have a full ADCC camp, but it could also be because he's old. Unless I'm wrong.
And I'm never wrong.
I see Gordon using a foot sweep to either take Andre's back or take him down and transition to the back as Andre's recovering. And once it goes to the ground, who knows what Gordon's going to do? He could even bring an envelope. And even though in his most recent match, Andre tried to pull guard and enter into the legs Jordan Hawley style, and he was attacking outside heel hooks. But everyone knows this is not his specialty, and it came off as a joke when Buchecha tried to do it to Gordon in the last ADCC.
See at that point, that's an athlete who's looking at his opponent. He's one of the greatest of all time and saying there's nothing you can do to hurt me.
So we might see an opportunistic submission attempt from Andre, but I doubt his guard will be able to hold up to the passing pressure of Gordon. And when you think of control leading to submission, no one does that better than Gordon. So hopefully you all were able to take away some things to look for that will make the grip fighting less boring, and maybe I was able to convince some of you that Gordon can actually wrestle a little bit. And although this match may be a bit boring, I expect it to be a very tactical match that hopefully us jiu-jitsu nerds can appreciate. And just a reminder, you probably won't be seeing a video from me for the next couple weeks, but stay tuned and we'll see you after ADCC.